It's so square. Middle of nowhere. Why would anybody want to live there? And why, in God's name, would somebody in America name a state Colorado? I want to live in Kentucky, because that's where Daniel Boone lives. That's what went through my mind growing up as a kid in La Paz, Bolivia. As I stared at the gigantic map of the US we had on one of our walls. Because I knew that one day we would end up in the US. You see, most of the kids I knew wanted to be in the US, and their parents did everything they could to get their kids to the US. My family was no different. I was a pretty typical South American kid, born to an Italian-French father, and a Spanish and Inca mother. The Inca blood is where the tan comes from. My dad worked for USAID, which is the US Agency for International Development. He was a civil engineer, worked developing and designing bridges and highways all over the world. His office was in the American Embassy, which I loved because I would go visit him, and he'd always take me to the cafeteria where I would have hamburgers, and we'd walk right past the gigantic, larger-than-life Marines guarding the embassy in the perfectly pressed uniforms. That was such a treat to go to the embassy. Well, as many of you may remember, back around 1980, when people in the US were losing their jobs thanks to our second worst president, Jimmy Carter. My father too was at risk of losing his job. And after 20 years of service to USAID, they asked him, what is it that we can do for you? He said, I would like two things. I would like an expedited visa for my family to the US, and I would like to cash in my entire retirement along with my severance package. And they said, done. So yes, we were put at the front of the line to go through the process to get a visa to the US. So yes, we had to go through the process. And so, on a cold December day in 1981, my parents risked everything and brought the 5 kids to the US. And where did we end up? In that square state that I stared at so much as a child. Now, growing up in South America was largely apolitical, primarily because politics are so corrupt down there. And like a good Latin American boy, the ladies were my primary interest. But after moving here, I had sort of an awakening politically. And even though I didn't know that much about politics, I always identified with conservative values and often wondered why anybody would subscribe to Democrat values. It just didn't make any sense to me. People would talk about welfare. And I thought, why would the government give somebody money for doing nothing? I don't know. I didn't understand that. In high school and college, I was your South American version of Alex P. Keaton. In my suits, little briefcase. My friends mocked me. I didn't care because, you know, I had a job from the day I turned 16. And I haven't gone unemployed for very long ever, thank God. But I always had those ideals of conservative values. And in fact, when I became a proud US citizen in 1988, the letter that came with my naturalization certificate bears the signature of Ronald Reagan. And I love that. Now, last year I had a chance to go back to my native Bolivia, to my former classmates' 25th high school reunion. After 29 years I returned. But a change. The country has changed, and not for the better. Many of them had a lot of questions about America. What's America like? You know, they all think that everybody here is rich, pretty, and that life is so easy. To some extent, I had to correct them a little bit. I said, you're right, in a way. And if you ever get the chance to move to America legally, play by the rules and work hard, life, in fact, is pretty darn comfortable in America. People leave you alone. You see, America is one of those countries that people have this vision because it's the only place where people can come and become Americans and either succeed or fail to the best of their abilities. And that's what attracts people to want to be in the United States. It only took a couple of days for me to write to my siblings while I was in Bolivia and say, we need to get on our hands and thank our parents or on our knees and thank our parents for bringing us to the US. They risked everything to be here and give their kids a better life. And I'm so very, very thankful for that. Now, it's interesting that in my job at University of Phoenix, I get to travel the entire country, see all the beautiful cities we have and the beautiful people of our country. And the funny thing is that every time I come home and I land at DIA, I'm so glad that my parents brought us to that square state. Because just like all of us here, everybody wants to be college.